One of the many causes of the War of 1812 was the impressment of U.S. sailors. What does impressment mean? Who was responsible for it? In the 1800s, life as a sailor was difficult. Crew members lived in dark, cramped quarters, which were frequently plagued by mice and rats. Bathing was infrequent, while the smell and presence of seawater was a constant force. Seasickness, scurvy, and dysentery were common ailments. Fresh food was a rarity. The usual diet consisted of heavily salted meat, biscuits that were extremely hard and usually filled with bugs or worms, and cheese. Flogging was a standard punishment for those who violated minor rules, while punishments for larger infractions could be much worse, including death. During wartime, there was also the risk of being taken as a prisoner, getting killed by enemy fire, or drowning if the ship were sunk. Because of these hardships, very few men were willing to volunteer. When the Royal Navy was in need of sailors, and no volunteers were available, they often resorted to impressment. This means they would send out a press gang and round up able-bodied men and force them into service. In the early 1800s, Great Britain was fighting the Napoleonic Wars against France. During this struggle, the Royal Navy swelled to more than 600 ships. Over 140,000 sailors were required to man these vessels. With the need for more and more sailors, the Navy expanded their use of impressment. However, the British did not stop at impressing their own citizens. They also began stopping American ships and forcing Americans to serve in the Royal Navy. Many of these American sailors had been born in Great Britain and had served in the Royal Navy before. They had defected to the United States and became sailors for America. In the eyes of Great Britain, these men were still British citizens and members of the Royal Navy. Therefore, they would stop American ships, search for any defectors, and take them back to serve aboard a British ship. To make matters worse, the British seemed to show little regard for whether the individual had ever lived in Great Britain. Many men who lived their entire life in America were also impressed. The United States did not appreciate this practice. In fact, Americans were furious about the ships being stopped and their sailors being forced into British service. Americans were also embarrassed that they were unable to protect their ships and sailors. The outrage grew when British ships began searching American vessels off the coast of the United States in U.S. territorial waters. One of the worst incidents occurred on June 22, 1807, just off the coast of Norfolk, Virginia. The HMS Leopard approached the USS Chesapeake, and British forces attempted to board the vessel and search for deserters. The Chesapeake's commander, Commodore James Barron, refused to allow the search to take place. Not long after, the Leopard opened fire on the Chesapeake and forced it to surrender. The British boarded the ship and took away 4 crewmen. 3 of the Chesapeake's sailors died, and 18 were wounded, including her captain. When the Chesapeake returned to harbor, word of the Leopard's attack spread quickly. Angry citizens destroyed casks of water bound for British ships and nearly killed a British officer. President Jefferson issued a proclamation that all British ships were banned from entering U.S. ports, and those already in port were told to leave. The attack on the USS Chesapeake, as well as the continued impressment of American sailors, would be 2 of many factors which would eventually spark a war between the United States and Great Britain.